Welcome to episode 344. I'm Kevin Oakley, and with me today is the ad doctor Andrew Peak and Jessie Suggs.
What a day. What a day. Man,
It's going to
hype
be a
it
great
up.
day.
Yeah.
It's a great day to be
Once
alive.
again, starting of the show, a reminder that the summit, over 300 people have already registered. It's happening early in October. Check out the link in the show notes. It'll be sold out before you know it. Don't be sad. Don't be one of those people who email Mike and I and say, please, can you let me get in?
No,
You don't
the answer is no.
do yourself a favor.
That's
Just
rude.
go ahead and grab a ticket while
Just
there's
get it now.
one left.
Be prepared.
All right,
You know it's
Jessie,
worth.
story time. What do you got?
Oh gosh, I was thinking about this. I have one quick one and then another one that ties into what seems to be the common theme of story time on Market Proof Marketing recently about cars. My first one is I went and visited my mom in Florida recently, and
what a
I
great
didn't
state.
realize how techie older people are getting. And I mean that in like the nicest way, but I went in there and my mom was
Yeah.
like, she has smart bulbs, Alexa's connected to everything. She can dim stuff from here to there and everywhere just with her voice or her phone. So, I mean, that was amazing. But my real story time is about my car buying experience, which has been a while since then. So you guys are probably thinking, why are you bringing this up now? But it's because I
was gonna say,
keep
is this the second one?
getting communication from them
Mm.
that is garbage. I mean, like it's not even targeted to me. It's like trying to sell me another car and talking about how they've taken off their
Yeah.
dealer price where they add an additional fee based on, the demand. So I get this text. Well, first, let me tell you, I bought a car. We show up to the dealership. He only pays attention to my husband, which is totally fine. But he comes up and he shakes our
That's nice.
hand and he says, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I totally remember you guys. So glad you came back." And I was like, "We've never been here before. Like, never been here. We had an appointment with this guy." And he goes, "By the way, I'm busy. My trainee is going to take care of you." Because I think he thought we weren't serious. And so I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay." Well, at the end, the trainee's like, "Hey, we have to split the commission." And I was like, "Heck no." I was like, "I'm sending an email in. I want you to get the commission." He didn't even, one,
Yeah.
remember, and two, do anything. And so the texts that keep coming through are obviously very automated because they're coming from the first guy.
Yep.
And I never did a review on him. And he keeps asking me for a review because he gets bonused on it. And I just thought it would be interesting to read the strategy here and get your feedback. So, hey, just wanted to check in and see how things are going with your car. Please let me know if there's anything I can do for you. By the way, we sent you an email for a survey. Take a moment. Please make sure you give us all fives. It's really important to our job, our income, and ways for us to provide to our family. That's all it said. That's all it said. And I was like, ooh, tacky. Like,
Super, man.
and this has been a year now.
Yeah. Wow.
And
That's
weird,
but
right?
think about how efficient he's being, Jessie. He's getting all this follow-up done. It's incredibly efficient.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's
He tried to
incredible.
sell me another
Automation.
car. And it wasn't even the one I inquired about. So
There's multiple issues here. One, automation is not the solution that managers in particular, because I'm actually not convinced that most salespeople. Okay, so here's the like the game within the game is, do salespeople really believe in automation as much as their managers do? I'm not certain, because isn't that what we've experienced for the last 12 years is like whatever excuse to not use the system. So here's the thing. We've been talking a lot about, well, that's just issues with change and you got to get on board. But what if a lot of times managers are asking salespeople to do something they know intuitively isn't the right thing? Now, that doesn't mean they're doing anything better, because oftentimes they're doing nothing, unfortunately. But it is interesting to think about, like, maybe there is something to that. So just automation in general, always be super careful about what you're doing.
That's what I put. Like, I was thinking, just because it can be automated doesn't mean it should. And the strategy of something is better than nothing is not always the right approach. Like, I think people just want to get in front of people for the sake of letting their brand be.
Well, it might be for other sakes that I will tie into my story time too.
Yeah.
the internal dynamics of what's being required again by their manager. But the other part is data and big data and being smart and personalization. It's like, well, but we're adding Jesse's name to the piece of automation, so that makes it personal. Or we bought this list of the vehicle I still get emails offering to buy a car that I have not owned in 3 years, or consider trading this in. And again, I always just picture like a younger version of myself or what's going on inside that company where there's someone like spinning around their chair in their marketing cubicle. And they're like, this is awesome. I'm helping these know nothing salespeople get their job done because I'm smart and I'm using big data and I'm using personalized printing and I'm using all these, I'm paying for these amazing services. And then is all that comes out at the end of it.
I know.
Like just because you're using automation or AI or data, you can add all the ingredients. You don't follow the recipe or a recipe, and all you're going to get is a lump of dough. It's not going to be something anyone wants to eat.
No, nothing to rise.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'm not never buying a car from you again. I will never buy a car from you. So
yeah, so my story time that I think may tie into this is an increasing amount of, and I had another conversation, and this most recent conversation, I actually think they're approaching it the best way you could approach it. But what's the word I'm looking for? But a sales environment where you can cross-sell and customers are up for grabs if they haven't been communicated with. So a competitive sales floor, but not like with physical walk-in traffic, right? Because we all know that's bad. Like when 3 people are lined up at the dealership and like, okay, then who gets this one? Who gets to you first? Or what? Like, hopefully as an industry, we know that's a bad idea. But this idea of, I can't get my salespeople to follow up, so I'm going to create a competitive sales floor when it comes to follow-up. So that inevitably creates follow-up that a salesperson might be, like he might be doing some of this on his own because he's getting pressure of like, if you don't keep communicating with the Suggs family, someone else can take the Suggs family. And for some reason, he didn't update the field that says you actually bought. And so he's just thinking like, oh my gosh, or something's going on there. But I also just worry that, so let's just talk briefly about the pros and cons from your own experience or interactions of this. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it can work, but from the consumer's perspective, I think there's a case to be made that it's way more gray than black and white of whether it quote unquote works. It's like if you're not getting any follow-up at all and you've been working with Kevin and then suddenly Andrew shows up and offers to help you. Well, yeah, getting a response or follow-up versus no response or follow-up in theory is better. But then that's not necessarily true from the consumer's perspective because they're like, who are you? I don't remember you. Back to that, like, have you been in before? It's just, it can get awkward real quick.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about a purchase this big, whether it's a car or a house or something of substantial value, you're not really, people are buying the product for the product, if it makes sense for them and if it fits their needs, and the customer experience is the icing on the cake. I mean, but it doesn't necessarily, in my opinion, it didn't sway me from not buying with them, but it will sway me from buying from them again. Like I'll just do another dealership to buy the type of car that I have. They just won't get my business. And so it's like this disconnect of, I had one really good person and one really not great person. And it's like, where is the sales leadership? How is it so disconnected? Because I told you guys on one of my other story times, the guy who actually helped me, who was the trainee, mailed me that hand-drawn car or whatever in a frame. So just 2 totally different experiences within the same leadership umbrella. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. Like, how often do you think in a competitive follow-up environment like that for on-site salespeople in particular, you're going to end up getting 2 communications within the same period of time that are, again, somewhat awkward, where the customer's like, who am I responding to? Because I got 2 emails or I got 2 text messages or I got, and it goes back to I think what you just said, like, where is sales leadership? Another call this past week, the VP of sales and marketing is like, we we train over and over and over again about the type of experience and we want our customers to have and the sales process that we want to use as a team. And then we shop our salespeople and we say, they're not doing any of it. And then we even like, we'll go and talk to the salesperson. They're like, no, I'm doing it. Like, and then, so that's like, either they think they're doing it and they're wrong, or they're just lying to you and they don't really care because they don't believe in what you're asking them to do. But it comes back to so many times we just aren't fully inspecting that interaction, and it proceeds to follow up. It's not just when they're there. Like follow up is and has been for a long time as important as the on-site experience. And you could make an argument, we don't have to do it today, that it's more important than the on-site experience.
To your question about the shared or the, being able to cross-sell, I think if you work for a builder who has 2 agents that are constantly following up, potentially in the same week, you're not going to have a follow-up that is not targeted to that customer. Like if your sales team is trained that well to have multiple people reaching out to the same customer, there's going to be clear like rules and clear data and clear like boundaries. The flip side is when things start to slow down and people are like, I need to make some money, and then they go in like sharks. I don't think a clean system would ever have that problem. But on the flip side, I just recently experienced with a builder, no opportunity to cross-sell no matter what. Like your community is your community and that's it. And it caused a little bit of a pain point for the online sales specialist and in turn the company for sales because they just launched a coming soon community. And now their on-site is out on maternity leave. And the person who could cover for her is going out of the country for 10 days. And so none of the agents want to take any appointments because they can't make any commission. And so now it's like that double-edged sword of like. Yeah.
I mean, I think cross-selling inventory makes a lot of sense. And I know on your lot builders and custom, I mean, it's not cross-selling itself that I think is a challenge. It's kind of setting out these dictations of follow-up must occur or else you lose people. That then says, okay, well, I don't want to do great follow-up because this person's a C or a D, but I need to check the box. And again, this last conversation I had, they had set up some great rules of like a personal bomb video is like mass mails don't count. They had some good pieces in there, but inevitably when you see your task list is like 40 people today are going to drop off if I don't do follow-up on them, there's no way to do that well. But the incentive is I've got to do 40 of them today so those people don't decide to buy tomorrow and Jessie gets the credit. Right. So it's not putting the customer first is my point. It's like, it's not solving the root issue. It can be a way to get to a solution, but I don't know that it oftentimes in that scenario is solving the root problem of just demanding a certain outcome from your teammates and then holding them accountable to it.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All
Did
right,
you have
Andrew?
your story, Kevin? So mine is, I'll pretend it's related. I think it's connected. Application of technology. So Publix, one of America's great grocery stores,
My favorite.
home of BOGO. They're really expensive, so I also don't like them. But it's right there, and it's consistent. I have the whole store memorized. That's just the way I am. You go over there. This is what I'm looking for. So I'm checking out. This is like, I don't know, 7:45 at night, a little bit later night. Just like we need a couple things. Like, hey, we're making dinner late. We usually eat dinner late anyways. So I'm checking out. It's like, I don't know, 12 things. Beep, beep, beep. And then the cashier, he's on his phone. I'm like,
Oh yeah. I'm seeing this.
Publix?
I'm seeing this a lot too.
Okay. I'm like, so like, you're watching me on the podcast. Like, I'm on my phone. I'm telling the story, but so here I am looking at my phone, but I'm still telling you the story about going to Publix and here's this person here. But I'm like, what is going on? I'm trying to get out of here. You're on your phone. Like what? And I'm not
Well,
gonna,
the Copa Cup or whatever is happening right now, so you got to watch soccer if it's on.
So there's something. So like, he's a younger guy. He's like under 18. They got a different, color shirt or whatever it is. The cashier also under 18. I'm like, man, your boy's got some girl troubles or something going on. I'm just being a smartass. And he's like, no. Like this one won't pull up on the register. So I have to use my Publix phone to look it up in the database. And he shows it to me. I'm like, oh, okay. And like you had all this stuff in there. I'm like, well, that's really weird. So to me, this was like, oh, this is a bad implementation of this system, which doesn't talk to the register. The phone was just an iPhone with a purple case. Like, it wasn't public screen. It wasn't like a little bit chunkier or ugly or like work looking or anything like that. I'm like, man, all these little subtle things that Publix could have done. Or maybe it was just like this store is trialing something. I have no idea. But like, here I am 35. I don't really care that he's on his phone. I was just giving him a hard time. Like, man, this guy's like got some issues he's dealing with here. If he's having to like blow up his phone, I'd imagine like someone who's older might be like more offended by it or something, or maybe not. That's an assumption. But it could have been easily solved. Like, it could have been green. He could have communicated like, hey, I have to look this one up, et cetera, et cetera. But I left like, oh, that was like not a normal experience. So to me, it's kind of two things. Application of technology, same thing here. The automation didn't work. It kind of ruined the experience. Maybe not like, for me, didn't ruin it. It was just like, that was weird. That was a Winn-Dixie experience.
Well,
like
so let me just pause you, because I think what's happening there is that solution, if it is an actual like corporately sanctioned solution, only has that worker in mind. Of instead of that person having to flip the switch, halt everything, call someone, get a price check, whatever. They're like, here, just use this, go on our online purchase experience so you can find the item, see the price, key it in, whatever.
Yeah.
But that is completely not considering the customer's experience of not understanding what's happening, assuming, and I've seen this enough where I thought this is where you're going, is just cashiers just straight up just watching soccer.
That's what I thought it was.
While they're swiping stuff, not paying any attention whatsoever.
Yeah. I'm like, this isn't Publix. Like, other stores, I'd kind of like be like, oh, it is what it is. It's Winn-Dixie. That's what they do here, but not Publix. So kind of higher expectation of the store. So, the tech was rolled out not so great, but then also on the marketing side, like, we get used to things, we learn, like, some troubleshooting, like this issue in analytics. I'm like, I cannot find the solution, but I'm troubleshooting because I know what's normal. I know what is good. I know what is successful. So here's Publix. I walk in, you get your things. This is a normal shopping experience. We've done it thousands and thousands of times. So on the marketing side, you're trying to get better. I'm like, this is like perfect example of like, you have to recognize these patterns to recognize when something does not fit the pattern. So you're running your ads, you have 50 ads, all of a sudden one doesn't work. Well, you only know it doesn't work because you know what does work. So it's kind of this question we get at like the Market Proof Academy. It's like, well, what is good? It's like, oh, well, you know what's good for you because you're in it enough. You need to get in there often. If you're not in everyday analytics or ads, or you're not making 20 outbound phone calls every day, you know what a good call is or a bad call. You're like, they all said no. It's like, oh, that's because 80% of the time you're not going to answer. Because
see, this is why you and Sarah do more of the teaching now in the academy, because as I get older and crankier, my answer, if someone said what's good, I'd be like, good is better and better is trying.
Sounds
like
good.
If it's not getting better, then it's not good. And if you're not getting better, then you're not trying. Like, that's it. End of story.
I like that
but
too.
I like your answer's more nuanced.
It's nuanced. Like, you need to know what's good. You need to make the calls. You get the reps in, so you recognize like, oh, that was a great call. That was a terrible call. Actually, this is a normal call. They should be like this. Jessie, what you're saying?
I think it's cool that it's neat that you acknowledge, like, I didn't expect this experience out of Publix. I expected it out of Winn-Dixie or whatever, because
for us it's Winn-Dixie.
They've built that experience up, the brand up. Because I just was this sounds totally country, but we were at Tractor Supply last week, had same experience, except
Piggly Wiggly.
He had her phone on speaker and she was having a conversation with her mom about this upcoming weekend and who was going to watch whoever, and did not ever say one word to me. Like, and I'm standing there awkwardly because I have to buy hay for my goats. And she doesn't ask me what I need. And so I'm sitting there like, and you have to order it from her because she has to scan it. Then you go outside. And I stood there for 3 minutes while she was on the phone, and she never acknowledged, like, why are you still standing here? And so finally I was like, hey, I need something. And I didn't come to expect that out of there, but now I'm like, well, that's my opinion moving forward. I better make sure I have extra time or whatever now that I go. So
that's why.
Just wear like a spinning neon LED thing on your, like, something that makes you unavoidable.
Yeah, help me. Because if at Publix, you'd go through self-checkout if you didn't want a real person to help you.
I'm just imagining a future where, as a consumer, you have to like put on different clothes when you go shopping to get people to stop looking at their phones who are supposed to help you. And it just needs to say like, I plan to spend $2,000 today. Like you're just going to have these shirts that project crystal clear to people that you would like to purchase something.
You need a polo and make a name up for your little farm that you got there with your goats.
Yeah.
And just like, oh, this person's fancy. I just need one thing of hay. They're like, oh, never mind. Never mind.
I wonder if, the whole thing about digital detox and people saying how bad it is for your mental health to doom scroll and all of that. I wonder if that's going to come in a wave and how that's going to affect some of the stuff that we're talking about, and even within our industry.
Yeah. I mean, I did not look at my phone for like a couple days when we were in Jamaica on vacation. And it was like, oh, like you kind of operate life. Work is different. So work is different. Say that here. But like we kind of operate that people deserve your attention no matter what. It's like, okay, I know you texted me yesterday, but like you don't deserve my time. You just as much as I don't deserve your time.
Right.
If I said that or I said it backwards. Work is different. You're being paid for something. You provide a service. You do the best you can. But like, no, I don't have to. I'm not you. You're not me. But I think we feel like we owe people. We feel like we always have this constant obligation to reply. It's like, I didn't set up the conversation. That might sound rude and selfish, but I think that's where we kind of transition to.
Yeah.
Think back to the house phone, like, oh, you missed the call. Okay. You missed it. Call back later. It's like, he called you.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there definitely are more schools this year going into the new school year where they are outlawing phones in the classroom, or at least they're going to attempt to. And I think I heard it was some comedian who was like, can you imagine for me in the 80s and the 90s being allowed to bring in to your class a television, a video game system, a radio, a record player, like board games, walkie-talkies, and just like, I'm just taking all these things to my desk. Don't worry about it. It's just like,
right here.
How? Of course, they're not learning the same way as they should be.
They're behind.
But then the struggle is real all summer long of like, what do you do with these rats? I mean, kids who are running around just constantly wanting to be on devices. And so I'm not sure the parents generally do much better than schools.
I will say the Quest 2, so VR in our house during summer is like constantly on someone's face. Like constant. Like, I don't know what it is. It made a resurrection.
It sounds like a lot of sweat is what it sounds like.
Well, their faces are like our oldest one. Like he's in 12. I'm like, bro, you got to like wipe that thing down, wash your face. It's humid.
You got something strapped to your face for hours. It just sounds sweaty.
It's super sweaty.
All right. Not sweaty is our first news story. Do you believe in ghosts? From our very own Jessie Suggs. Jessie, before we get into it, why did you feel the need to write this? Give us a quick 15-second summary of the article and then why you felt compelled to talk about it. And then we'll talk about some of the specifics in it.
Yeah, I wanted to write it because as we're going in and every lead is valuable, every lead needs follow-up, but there was no strategy or process to leads who had engaged but not moved forward in the process. So it's a process for leads who say not yet, that are not on a short-term, non-responsive follow-up process, but don't go into your long-term nurture that's totally general. So that's why. And that's exactly what it is. It's a suggested process on how the cadence and what to send before you call it a day and say, I did my due diligence on trying to engage this customer again personally, one-to-one, before I kind of change them in bulk to receive just a general monthly update.
Right. And just for those of you who either don't work with us or you're new here, we use a term called long-term follow-up. And that is follow-up that is not necessarily personalized. It might be segmented, but it's not personal. And that's for people beyond 30, 45 days who haven't been responsive or aren't engaged. Right. So the reason I want to say that is because it took me like working with Mike, and it was just the two of us. For the first 3 months, he kept talking about follow-up and long-term follow-up. In my mind, I thought, well, these words are very similar. One just says long-term, and that must mean it's the same thing, but beyond the first 45 days. And so it took me, sometimes I'm just dense. Like it took me a year working for a home builder to figure out what a gable was and a bulkhead in a kitchen. Sometimes words, I don't grasp them. So when we talk about follow-up and then long-term follow-up, or in your case saying, hey, I've done my due diligence on the short-term personal stuff. Now, it's not like we're saying, okay, nothing works, so I'm out. we're doing a different type of follow-up that is more efficient because we get a lot of people who fall into that bucket. So I just wanted to spend a second and clarify that for people. So this is all pre-long-term follow-up touch points for people who have engaged and then ghost. So that's kind of the setup here. So you want to just give your 4 touch points real quick?
Yeah, it's just using a variety. So to answer your question earlier, I noticed there's a lot of leads when we do audits that are dead in the system. So they're not receiving either, and they don't have an upcoming activity. And those are normally your hottest leads. You know, they're alive, you know that they're potentially interested, and you just forget to set a next step. And so this is as they ghost you or as they continue to be non-responsive when they were initially responsive. It's a suggested process. Of course, you can cater it however it makes sense, but it 4 touch points.
I want you to clarify that, because again, we're assuming that most people understand what you just said, but you said it very quick, and there's a couple of things in there that are really important. So when someone becomes responsive, the best practice is to shut off any automated next steps, because now they've been responsive. So we should have a personal next thing to say, because this then connects directly to your idea of ghosting. When you turn it off, and someone who's not a professional or playing the game at the highest level, let's say, would say, well, I don't need to schedule a next step that's personal, because the customer is going to initiate the next step. Like, I did my thing and now we're playing tennis. It's their job to hit the ball back to me. And then when they don't, that's typically where you get this scenario of there is no next step that's being set by the system. The online salesperson hasn't set a next step either, for a variety of reasons. But a lot of times subconsciously, it's like, well, they're going to respond to my message because now we're friends. And so I don't have to worry about a next step. But then you're saying, especially in today's marketplace, we're seeing that happen more and more, where people are then kind of ghosting, dropping off, not doing a follow-up. And then we've got these people who are, in your words, dead in the system. It's almost like they don't exist, even though they are higher quality than the average lead, because they have been responsive in the past.
Yeah, exactly. And so thank you for reminding me we're not on Online People Talking, where everybody knows all things online.
True.
But when you have that lead, and let's just say you engage in conversation and you ask for the appointment and you try to overcome whatever objection the customer gives you, and they just aren't giving, you're not going to fight them, but you might say, hey, I'm going to follow this call up with some information via email that we talked about. Look it over with your spouse and let me know what questions you have. You know, all my contact information's in there. I'm here to help. And some people leave it at that. And they expect, like you said, the customer to come back when they have questions. And they think, oh, I'm serving my customer best that way. But I think
you almost hope that their response is like, oh, I'm so sorry for making you wait. Like, it's totally on me. You're right. I should have. It's my job as the customer to continue this conversation, and of course that is almost never going to happen. But that's kind of subconsciously, again, I think what sometimes we tell ourselves.
Or we trained our brains back when there were too many leads to manage, like one-on-one, to say the people who are really interested are going to reach back out to me. Everybody else, they're not the hottest leads anyway. So we're not in that market anymore, and so we have to have a strategy. And so mapping it out with what I put was 4 touch points between 2 and 4 weeks from when they have stopped responding to you, using a variety of communication. So for me, it was a phone call followed by a text message, then a personalized video email, and then a standard text only email, kind of setting expectations of, hey, it's been about 2 weeks or it's been about a month since we last talked. I'll be sure to stay in touch with you on a monthly basis. I don't want to, flood your inbox anymore. Let me know when you're ready. And then they start to loop into that, what you were talking about, Kevin, that long-term follow-up or the prospecting that's in mass.
Yeah, like that last message isn't a, hey, I'm done, you're never going to hear from me. It's still saying you're going to hear from me. It's just going to look different.
Right.
Until you're ready.
Yep.
Love it. Next up from inman.com. This isn't in the show notes, so this is new to my co-host here. But I think this is really important. Colorado, which is an organization that owns, I believe, the 16th largest MLS, but it's, I believe, 2 MLSs put together. They're selling to private equity. And that's not really supposed to happen, not something that people expected to happen. It's caused a bunch of, let's just say, angst in the community. And you can go read the article to go into detail. But I think some things that are interesting about this is MLSs are essentially local monopolies of housing data used by brokers and agents. If you disagree with that definition, that's fine. Again, I'm not saying I'm an expert in this. I'm just letting everyone know that it continues to be a truism since 2021 that you cannot ignore the used housing industry and what's going on over there, because it does potentially have implications for builders, just like we talked about with the real estate lawsuits. And now we've got builders who aren't paying agents. We've got builders who are saying we love agents more than ever, because thankfully they are paying attention and they're at least considering that and adjusting their approaches. Well, now we've got private equity buying an MLS, and private equity's main way they do things is they buy things, they optimize them, which is code for charge more and service less typically, or they just try to buy lots of different. In this case, that's kind of a conspiracy theory of is private equity going to like try to buy up a bunch of MLSs and then go back to Zillow and Realtor.com and CoStar and be like, you want this data, you're going to have to pay up for it. Who knows? Anyway, it's super interesting. Not something that people expected to happen. And no one really knows what the next step is and what exactly private equity's goal in purchasing it or what their plans are. But it's just something to pay attention to because it's different. And even like, did they buy it because they think they could just charge brokers and agents more money every year to be part of that MLS? And that's kind of the play in of itself. Or do they have a stronger belief in the value of the underlying data or the continued data that the MLS is going to provide? Who knows?
If there's not a return, then why would they buy it? So it's something.
Well, that's like they have a plan. No one knows what that plan is necessarily. But local folks in Denver aren't necessarily happy about it because they don't expect to get the same level of service, and they do expect things to change, not necessarily positively. Okay. There's really nothing they can do about it. But anyway, just tossing it out there as something for those of you who like to pay attention to the drama on the other side of the fence. You can go check out that news story. Next up from the Builders Daily, another great article from John McManus. He and I bump into each other at almost every event we go to. And it's one of the like highlights every time is he's just like, I really like what you write, Kevin. And I'm like, okay, this is like one of the OGs of writing in our industry. And last time I saw him, I go, John, I just have to ask you, how long does it take you to write things? Like, how long have you been writing? And I think he's like, I don't know, 30 years. And I was like, how long does it take you to write an article? And he's like, longer than I think still every time. I was like, oh, that both terrifies me and gives me hope that answer. I'm not doing anything wrong, wrong when it takes me a while to write something. But the article is Builders Tangle to Keep Buyers in the Game and Off the Sideline. And what I think is interesting, there's lots of aspects of this article you could take, but to me, the one that I think is most compelling is you have someone arguing that kind of once again, marketing and sales nurturing and follow-up process is incredibly important to and like the sensitivity to the local market conditions and reacting to it is going to be really important for the next couple months. There's a ton of great stuff in here, but that's kind of at a big picture, one of the things that I always find interesting when non-marketing people are arguing, because let's just face it, still most of the conversation around advertising and marketing is, I mean, some of it works, some of it doesn't. Seems like a lot of money. Do we really need to do this? If we just had better product, we wouldn't need to advertise. And so it's always great to hear someone take the opposite stand. But anything in this article stand out to either one of you?
Let's see. Months of supply is increasing, right? Which I think reinforces the point. Like now it's going to be, or it is. I think everyone's recognizing like our jobs as marketers to advertise better. Or even not advertise, to market our homes is going to be much more important than I think it has been.
Well,
and I say market versus advertise.
Hopefully marketing has had some insight or voice about the type of inventory that's being created. Because again, one way or the other, it's not your problem, or it's not your fault, but it is your problem. Like you've got to get rid of this inventory, and they're going to look for you to try to solve it. And the uglier the pig is, the harder it's going to be, or in this case, the more expensive and the more optioned up the pig is, potentially, depending on the market, the harder it's going to be. So you own it one way or the other. And that's why if you're not involved in how that process works, you really should begin to be like tomorrow.
Agreed. And I'd said market, because I think there's a lot of opportunity. So advertising, to me, I use the word advertising as really just pushing what you are selling, like more eyes, more traffic to your site, more promotion. Then market would be like, we're convincing someone. Maybe it's not full on the persuasion, but like, hey, here's this beautiful home versus specs, 2,500 feet, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, etc. It's like, hey, someone needs to take action. Maybe they were not considering moving, but they could afford it. So those people, I think, are opportunity. And so advertising new homes from the 600s won't convince that person versus something. This sounds dorky, I'm just making it up, like live the life you deserve, or you're like, your life could be this, like showing like, hey, you're here, this is what it's like to live in Epperson in Wesley Chapel, Florida. Every day's a vacation. No joke, like it is. So you need content around that, and then you need to push the message and advertise it. And I think that first part of making the homes much more than just like, hey, here's the house and the specs, I think that is, a general weakness for most people, because it's hard. You have to test things, you have to try things, and there's no, hey, what's the quick answer on that? There's no quick answer. Like, you have to figure it out yourself. For your builder, it needs to fit your builder, their brand, their vibe for a younger term than just like, hey, we need to get eyes on this.
I like how you said your builder, because when you look at the mitigated risk for inventory management in the article, it talks about oversupply. And so, you have to be able to determine, and I think from a marketing to the sales world, sometimes we are tracking and reporting, hyper tracking and hyper reporting in the marketing side. Like, we're all about the data, and then it goes to the sales world, and all we want to see is the contracts. We want to see that, but we don't necessarily do the data to say what's selling, how many inventory do we need. And I'm generalizing that, of course, but we have to take our personal opinion out of it as well. Like, oh, I wouldn't want to build right now with the potential risk of increased interest rates. We're not our buyers. So we have to see what is happening within our builder to determine what that risk is for the sales side.
Yeah, and that's a process that can't be accelerated beyond a certain point. Here's what I mean by that. A couple weeks ago, someone said to me, well, I want to be able to trust that I'm an expert and trust my gut on things. I need to listen to my gut more. I was like, I'm not convinced that's what experts do. I think, yes, they do have broader general knowledge, but to me, what experts are able to do, and I've said this before, is if there's a Jenga tower, which is thoughts and ideas being stacked on top of each other that leads you to a complex end result, experts are able to say very quickly, swipe the table clean, start from first principles, rebuild based upon data you can access and that expertise, and start from the beginning and work back their way, rebuild the tower, and do that faster than someone who's not an expert. That's what expertise is. And so what you're saying that I really just want to amplify, Jessie, or say in a different way to try to help amplify, is you can't just look at a data point, any data point, and say, I know. The experts and the best builders, yes, they know their local market better than most people, but they still are checking current data sets, reviewing assumptions, challenging ideas, and doing that all super, super fast. They're not just saying, oh, my gut says build more houses, or my gut says across the board price increase or across the board price decrease. It's doing all these little adjustments and reviews, but having that frequency and experience to be able to start from the basics and work your way through it without it becoming like a month-long process. It's like, I can do this in 30 minutes for each community and retest from the ground up. Are we positioned right? Because to your point, yes, inventory overall is in a 9.3 month supply. And the worst ever was 12.2 in 2009. You don't want to get anywhere near that. The best or lowest was 3.3 months in August of 2020. So big picture, yeah, we probably have a little bit too much inventory, But for you, the specific builder listening, and there's no inventory on the market in the $400,000 to $500,000 price range, and you've got 4, maybe you should start 2 more because there's nothing else there, right? So you can't just blanket statement this stuff anymore. You could in 2020 and you could in 2009, those 2 different peak and trough periods, you could blanket statement, but outside of that, you really can't.
Agreed.
All right. Next up from Instagram. This is a super short one.
From Instagram.
Amanda, and I think this is the head of marketing for SparkToro, I believe. Yeah. She and so they have their own bias and bent, but I like this. She said, if ChatGPT can write your content for you, then that content wasn't worth writing in the first place. This is another variation of Mark Davidson from 1000 Watt. He posted early on, he said, if you're a really great marketer, copywriter, branding person, you would type things into ChatGPT and then do the exact opposite of whatever it comes back with, because whatever it comes back with is boring, average, and normal. And that's not going to get anyone's attention. That's not going to make people feel different. It's just the average, right? So
I like that.
I like it.
You know what I used ChatGPT for earlier? Was give me the top 10 ingredients per these cuisines, Greek, Mexican, etc. Because I didn't want to, I'm just like, what is it? And so I'm trying to like organize my shopping. This is really weird, but that's what I want to do. So I gotta have like, oh, I want to do this today. And I know like it's not that complicated. So I just want my list and here's what I'll go at every week. Make it easy. Boom, boom, spits it out. I'm like,
sure.
Cool.
But like, what's the
That's
risk?
what it's for.
What's the downside risk of it telling you one wrong ingredient of the top 10?
None. My Mexican
Like
food is gringo.
$3.75, or with inflation, maybe it's
Right.
$5.80.
And that's
like-
it's beautiful. But back to like the article on supplies increasing. Hey, we have to learn how to market our homes. If you go to ChatGPT for that, like, ooh, wrong move. Maybe you have your own ideas. You understand the community. You know what you're supposed to sell. You know your builder. ChatGPT can help you iterate and have different versions. Like, oh, I didn't think about that word. I always use the word discover, or find, or explore. Let me rewrite this 10 different ways. Oh, okay, cool. There's a variation I didn't think of, or it saved you 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Use it for that, but not the. I think the starting point. I heard that message a couple times at the builder show. I'm like, I started ChatGPT. I'm like, oh gosh, people pay you for that? That's insane. Like this is like I could start. This whole room can start at ChatGPT and do what you just talked about. Your expertise.
I think I didn't say this on the last podcast, so I'll just say it super quick. But I met someone who everyone in this. I mean, I didn't. I saw again a friend of mine who also almost all of you would know. I'm not saying a male or female or anything, but they started off a conversation by talking about how they really love using generative AI and LLMs for this, this, and this. And I said, time out. As your friend, I just want to tell you, never say that again. With like
time out.
People who are around you that are potential customers or whatever, it's no different. The old saying is those who are most creative conceal their sources the best. There is zero reason to ever, it's not something to be proud of. I think people are confused about this. Like, it only works if people don't know you're using it. And if you directly tell them you're using it, then all these AI experts that post every day on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever, and I'm like, if you were an expert, you would go run, like you could start a $300 million company tomorrow because you're so efficient at everything. And every example they're using is kind of like your shopping list analogy. And they're like, so therefore use it for your Fortune 100 company to change the world. I'm like, oh.
We'll do that.
Anyway, if you use AI and you're using it well, no one would know you're using it. Mm-hmm. And so if you just start telling everyone, this is how I use it, it doesn't make you look cooler. The coolest people will be the ones who you're like, I have no idea how they get all that stuff done. And they're just like, I work really hard. And they wink at you.
Done.
All right. Favorites. What do we got for favorites this week? Oh, Jessie. Yes, I just started using that too.
Yeah. Okay. Going back to my OSC days, I used like prospecting pads, paper, notebooks, everything. And then I would hold on to them and treasure them for so long because I'm like, maybe I need something from a notebook 5 years ago. The other day, I threw everything away, which was super liberating. I know that sounds crazy.
You should have burned it.
Yeah, I should.
Or liberating.
I recycled it. But I got
the
app Good Notes on my iPad. So now when I take something, I have all the data from whatever notes I took forever and ever. So I don't have to like let go of that. And you can do all kinds of neat stuff, folders, notes, colors, images, graphics, for online sales, taking notes for calls, or for us as coaches.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. So that's my favorite right now.
Yeah. Mine's simple. So you see my office, like what's behind me has not changed. That's way too much work to change. But in front of me, no one gets to see it unless you live here in my home. I moved everything around. I got rid of a bunch of stuff. And I know it's like, okay, you got rid of some furniture, whatever, but like it's refreshing. I don't know what it did mentally to me, but I'm like, oh, I like my office now. Look at all this room for activities.
Feng shui.
It's feng shui. Like it's like it feels so much better. Not that it was bad before. And I don't know. To me, that's like it's nice. It's very like it's just as great as like I got a new chair and it's super comfortable. Like visually, I see this a lot of hours per week and per day. And so changing the setup, like it's good. It's my new favorite. And it's just for me. Sorry, everybody.
It's like when you used to move like your nightstands and your bed when you were young or in high
Yes.
school and move your posters around. Felt like you were in a new house. Yeah. I love it too.
My favorite is a podcast called 99% Invisible. Brian McCarthy turned me on to it, and I'll just read the summary of what the 99% Invisible is. A sound-rich narrative podcast all about the thought that goes into things we don't think about, the unnoticed architecture and design that shapes our world. And I guess this is also a shout out to Greg Fusen, who does all the content for PCBC speakers and lineup and everything, because I believe it was Ryan, the founder of Cul-de-sac, which is the first carless community. It's in Arizona. Super cool project. Hoping to go out and visit with him soon, just to see it, because it sounds and looks from his talk so incredible. But he uses example like fire trucks are so large that the turning radius of those things dictates how streets are designed. So there's parts of every city where the streets don't need to be as big as they are. And you're like, this feels weird. It's that way because of the fire trucks being able to have to turn down to get in. And that's, if that kind of like, oh, wow, that's interesting. If you just said that to yourself, you should go listen to 99% Invisible, because it's just, that's what it is. It's really cool.
It might lead to some frustration in my brain of like why are we doing it this way?
Well, this is the frustration is how hard is it to do things over, and that goes back to the why is it easier to make Nike than change Converse? Like changing large anything is hard. Sunk cost fallacy. There's lots of reasons for that, but even Manhattan, right? They're trying to redo how traffic works. There's a Wall Street Journal article. They've spent $700 million and almost nothing has changed because they can't get people to like remove the friction that's been built up over 200 years of building stuff in Manhattan. And this is just the way it works.
That's just the way it is. Oh, I do have a hate. So the bear, I use that as my reference for the summit last year. Mm-hmm. Season 1, season 2, perfection. Season 3 launched last week. We talked about it on the podcast. I don't know. I'm assuming that a somewhat larger portion of our audience has seen it. Maybe not. It could be like 4 of us. Who knows? It's the same thing. It's I don't know. Other than it is in Chicago. So if someone wants to invite me to dinner Tuesday night at a place that is featured in the show, I'll be happy to join you. So let's go. There's a lot of restaurants that feature, and I'm trying to convince Mike to. There's this Michelin 3-star restaurant that we should go to as a company. I think we should go.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. A few dollars. It's me a few dollars. No shame. But it's on the show. Nah, it's just money. It grows.
Just money. Can't take it with you. All right, that'll do it for this week. We'll see you next time, everyone.
See ya.
See y'all.